Alright, welcome. I don't know, is this the last video ever? Could be. Or I could be trying to make some videos and make up for the beginning of the semester, and then you can review them all and watch all these terrible videos again. Hard to say which way I would go if I were a student. It's hard. I'm sorry. I wish I was a better producer. I wish I had a technical team. I wish I could keep the camera straight because it's still tilted. I wish I had some audio where I could put one of those little things on my shirt, those little microphones. It sounds so good on TV. But we're a little bit limited by our production technical facilities, which I guess means I don't know. If I could have done this more professionally, I could have just had this really excellent archive, but I don't. I would have to do it all over again. Maybe I'll start a podcast or a YouTube channel because of the inspiration of this time period. Okay, so yesterday, the last thing we did is we looked at Mr. Carl Leuven, the German guy who they say studied in America. Who knows, in 1951, what was he doing during the Second World War? They never talk about it. Carl Leuven. He's forced, so we looked at two things about him. We looked at his freeze and unfreeze idea about change management, to realize you have to soften people up before you cook them. And the second one was called the force field analysis. The force field analysis is quite general, and it's mostly a thinking tool. It's not really, it doesn't give you, I mean, it's subjective to what you believe the power of certain influences are. But there's a video mentioned in our book. It's not very long, but and it's okay as an example. It's short, it's like 5 minutes, so let's check it out. An example of using the force field analysis.
Or as a team or a department, that you need to change the way you do things. And I wanted to share with you today a very simple yet powerful tool that, should you decide to use, can be very useful in helping you show your team members the benefits or the reasons for wanting to change. And it's called a force field analysis. Now, to do a force field analysis, it's very simple. You can use a boardroom or a meeting room or some large area, find a whiteboard or some butcher's paper, and on the page you write 3 headings: hindering forces, present performance, driving forces. And in the centre you write down what the present performance is. In this case, let's imagine that we are expecting our salespeople to now start making direct calls to clients to set up appointments. Now, I realise you might be watching this and you are not a sales manager. That's okay, but let's just imagine that that's a scenario. So up until recently, your staff had not had to call your clients direct and set up appointments, but now they do. So this is a tool that you can use to facilitate, and what you would do is you would write those 3 things up, and in the centre you'd write down the present performance. And now you start asking the team, what are some of the things that are stopping us from making these calls? What are the hindering forces? And someone says, well, it hasn't been done before. We've never done this in our organisation. Fair enough, you write that up. You then ask again, so what's hindering us from doing this? Someone else says, well, we haven't had any training to do this work. Okay. What else? Well, a lot of our salespeople are very negative about having to do this. Okay. And you go through as many of the hindering forces as possible, and then you think about the driving forces. Okay, what's compelling us to make this change? And someone says, well, the sales budgets have increased this year. Okay, what else? The competition is getting tougher, and our competitor salespeople have to do this. Okay, what else? We want to offer better service to our customers by having more contact and direct contact. Okay, what else? It's a new KPI, so as part of our new performance appraisals, all salespeople are now expected to call clients directly. So then what we do is we go back and look at the hindering forces and we give each one of these a rating between 0 meaning no real issue or impact, and 10.
You don't have to use 10, you can use 3, 5, whatever. 10 is kind of crazy. How can you you're making it up in your head anyway, so. 2 problems with the force field. One, I mean, you're picking what you want to pick. You know, why should people care about a new KPI? I don't want a new KPI. What's the point? Is it related to my job performance, or is it just, I mean, maybe it is, or maybe it isn't, but it's like just saying it. It's a new thing, yay, that's a positive. This one, yeah, okay, we're obviously, these are all very, very strong, they use all these strong things to make, because they want change, right? These ones, it's like, well, I never did it before, we can just teach you. I'm not trained for it, we can just teach you. Negative self attitude. Smile, here's a couple extra dollars. Okay, so these ones are, if you choose which ones are the forces for and against, then you're also choosing kind of basically which ones are most important. So it's kind of biased. There's a lot of bias.
Meaning this is a very big impact on our business. So the very fact that our staff have not made calls before, what sort of issue, what sort of impact is this on our business? And we decided among ourselves it's probably about a 3. The fact is, they're salespeople. They know how to make a phone call. It's not as if we're expecting them to do brain surgery. Number 2, they've not had training to do the work. All right, fair enough. We haven't trained them specifically. It is an issue. It's not the most compelling issue, but we acknowledge it by putting a 6 there. Negative self-attitudes. Okay, we acknowledge that the staff are very negative towards having to do this. And that certainly is a major hindering force, which we want to try and address. All right, let's have a look at the other side. Driving force, sales budgets have increased. What's the impact of this on our business? Well, it's a 10. Obviously, if sales budgets have increased, we have to meet our budgets. It's the ultimate. Competition is getting tougher. That's an 8. Again, it's a fact. If we want to keep our jobs, we have to acknowledge that competition is getting tougher, therefore we have to compete. We want to offer better service, we'd say that's an 8. As part of our organisation's approach to improving, we see that as being very, very important. And finally, it's a new KPI. Well, that's a fact. It is a new KPI and we have to do it. It is a driving force. We might like it, but we have to do it. Now what you do is you add up your numbers for the hindering forces.
Yeah, okay, so you have 3 things here that you picked. So you give everything a 10. So yeah, you can make a force field say whatever you want. The point is that you should be, or you should attempt to be, a bit honest about the balance of the forces involved. Now the last one he talks about here, this KPI 110, is that we have to do it. Well no, we don't have to do it yet, because this is the time that you are thinking about the change. This is not the change yet. You're considering the change. So if you're saying we have to do it, that means that the change has already happened. So for me, this one is already not, this doesn't make sense because we're not there yet. Right now we're trying to see, should we or shouldn't we require staff to call on clients? And this one is only after the decision has been made. So that's weird. This guy, he's completely biased towards making a change. So if you really, really, really want to use this model, then you should focus on being honest about what you're trying to do. You should understand that you're really trying to make a decision based on, information and input from people, and really understand the forces. If you just set it up, like if you showed this to the workers, they're just going to look at you like, yeah, so you just picked whatever you wanted to pick and you won. What was the score? The score was 36-17. Wasn't very close, was it? Well, I guess we're going to do the change, guys. Sorry. So it's fixed. It's biased. So if you really want to use Lewin, you have to be a little bit honest about the forces at work. This guy is not honest. Okay, so that's that for now. Let's move on to Cotter. Cotter built on Leuven's ideas, and as we all know from some of our business literature, we had the 4 Ps, and then there were 7, and then some people say there are 8 Ps now. That you know, people who make business books try to sell theories. They just modify things and change the ones and add new things and try to say it's a new theory because they want to differentiate themselves, because they want to have a competitive advantage in the business management theory industry. So Cotter comes up with 8 steps. Now I could come up with Keats' 10 steps and then sell another book, I guess. But he's like, 8. After 8, no one's going to want to read more than 8. If I say 7, someone might say 8. Remember what happened with the 4 Ps? See? So, anyway, Cotter is the, I don't know what to say, godfather of change management theory now. Somehow he's got a real niche. He's the nichiest of these people. So here is, I'm not going to go, I will look at this one for a minute, and then I will go to the second one, just minor.
What if business tries to implement a change in management?
There's some minor differences in the resistance theories, why people resist. As we saw from the initial video last week, Cotter is probably the most negative of all of these people in terms of how he sees people who are resistance to change. These people here, I guess there's another person involved named Schlesinger. I don't know who is Schlesinger. Was there a picture of Schlesinger in here? I don't see it. I don't see her. Is that her? I don't know. Anyway, they have defined 4 main reasons why change is resisted. They love to put things in numbers. Self-interest. Self-interest. So what's better for them is compared to what's better for the company. Again, I will say when it comes to Cotter, he is on management's side. He believes, when he assumes what he assumes, he basically starts from the point that the change, whatever it is gonna be good. It's gonna work. That is the right change. So if you're given that beginning point, sometimes it's hard to understand the resistance to the change. But he doesn't really have a theory about well, he might, but I don't know it. He doesn't have a real, change and whether or not you should change. He's working with the idea that the change, he wants to get paid by companies to come in and to be the guy who helps them lead their change. Whatever change the management wants to make. And usually they call it expert when the change is very difficult. Alright, so then we have self-interest, which I guess could be contrasted with the interest of the business. Different assessment of the situation, which is, you know, if you're seeing things from a different point of view or a different spot on the map, then it's very possible that you can see some problems that the people who are far away from the situation may not see. Misinformation or misunderstanding, so that implies from the listener's side, it doesn't really seem to talk about the problem from the communicator side. Low tolerance for change and inertia. I think that would be more management than work. I mean, there's workers' side inertia, but most inertia is management's failure to change. Self-interest, perceived threat to their job security, status, and financial position, which is understandable. This picture tries to make people look like they're even more selfish than this picture is painting. Individuals often place their own interest ahead of those of their organization. Well, yeah, I mean, when my dad was working, they had a system for, you know, after retirement that he would get money, you know, to survive after he retired. Many companies now, they don't provide that. They don't provide health care. They don't provide job security at all. So the loyalty of the worker to the company is reflected in the loyalty of the company to the worker. So if there's less loyalty, obviously people are more self-interested because they know the company doesn't care about them. So there's other factors involved with this. It's not just people are selfish. Excuse me. Many people suffer from inertia or reluctance to change because of the stability. Well, it's like that first video. It's like the guy has to see that the change is going to bring him something that's positive. If things are going well, why would we change? The risks involved sometimes are higher than what the perceived benefits are the change are. Disagreement about the need for change and what the change needs to be. So this is different from self-interest. The resistance here is based on disagreement about the business, what's best for the business, not what's going to be the change. Yes, we need to change, but how to change? This is when many great bands break up. Misinformation and misunderstanding. People don't understand why the change is needed because they're misinformed. Whose fault is that? I guess that's the way to put it. Whose fault is that if they're misinformed? Is that the fault of the people who are supposed to be communicating to them? Or do they really understand correctly and they don't agree, which would be, I guess, difference of assessment of the situation. So that's what Cotter says is holding people back. And then that leads to the 6 methods of overcoming resistance to change.
Hi there. In a previous topic video, we took a look at some work by Cotter and Schlesinger that looked at the 4 main causes of resistance to change. The same theorists also went on to identify 6 ways in which an organisation could overcome resistance to change. So let's take a quick look at these 6 categories. Starting with education and communication. The obvious starting point for a major change project is to try to explain to those affected by it why the change is needed, what's involved, what are the implications for people in the organisation. And a process of early and honest communication is often the most effective way to get a change management program underway. On its own, education and communication is not enough. And the key point at the bottom there is that it needs to be delivered consistently, not just at the start of the process. Because change management projects, by definition, tend to be pretty complex and long-standing, so communication needs to flow throughout. The next stage, identified as a way of overcoming resistance to change, was participation and involvement. Getting the organisational employees involved in the process, a process called onboarding, awful piece of jargon. But we kind of know what it means. It means explaining the reason for change, getting involved in the process, perhaps involved in the project teams that implement the change program. Getting those affected by the change onboarded, involved, participating in the change project can be an effective way of overcoming initial resistance. The third is facilitation and support. Every change management project is bound to raise issues, concerns amongst those, particularly if they have concerns of self-interest about how they're going to be affected.
What's happening in this picture? Is this young guy interviewing or listening for some assistance and taking notes from this smart old dude, or is a young guy telling the old dude, that's it man, you're fired, you're out? I don't know, the guy looks kind of, I don't know, it's a weird picture. Anyway, so most of the ideas that Cotter has, I guess initially are that you, I mean, he's kind of a psychologist, he's kind of manipulating, he's thinking about how to, you know, use people against, it's almost political, you're using people against each other. Training, counseling, and mentoring. So yeah, finding ways to understand. So yeah, is he taking notes about what the guy's saying, or is he taking like information from the guy? It's very weird. Some people will need support to cope with the change. All right, and also training. Yes, training is important.
So therefore, processes of counselling, mentoring, training programs, as well as just actively listening to the concerns raised by those affected by the change, is an important part of firstly recognising resistance and concern, but then overcoming it. The fourth stage, or the fourth process, is known as manipulation or co-option. Manipulation, slightly worrying the phrase, slightly concerning term.
Yeah, I'll explain this. So, co-option means that you take the leaders of the resistance and you offer them some carrots to try to convince everybody else that they should accept the change. So basically, you're trying to politically neutralize the forces against the change. So you have to, like if there's a union, so this is what happens with a lot of unions, is there's a union leader and then the union leader ends up taking like what is, they're the leader of the union, but they somehow almost have a position like management, and so the management knows that they can get the leader of the union to tell the workers that something's going to be good for them, that the workers might listen more, but then if the workers decide that the union leader is basically co-opted, which means that they are being paid off by the management to tell them something that's not true, or as it says here, a selective use of information. So that's called a lie, by not telling something, omission. Then the union might say, okay, we're gonna change leadership because this person is controlled now by the management. They're not working for us anymore. They're working for the management. So it says here at the end, while the use of manipulation might be seen as unethical to trick people into believing you, it might be the only option. This is Cotter, John Cotter. Would you want him as your dad? Oh my God. He's like, well, I'm going to trick my kids into doing things. I mean, I know that parents do that a little, but you don't want to have it as a philosophy. It might be the only option if other methods prove ineffective. It gets worse.
What it really means is being selective about the information that you provide to people in order to encourage them to behave in a certain way. You might be slightly nervous about that. You certainly would be if you were in an organisation that was using it. You might argue it's slightly unethical, but it could be one way of overcoming resistance to change, as is co-option. This involves bringing in individuals into the change project who might otherwise be on the outside resisting the project. The fifth.
Keep your eye on that picture too. It's kind of funny. What's happening in that picture is this guy's being controlled like a puppet, right? So it's like, it's a little, questionable ethics there. Negotiation. Okay. maybe less unethical is to negotiate, try to give some kind of bargaining to offset what is happening.
Or negotiation and bargaining, providing incentives to people to follow the proposed change, or incentives to leave if they're not happy with it. So a classic example of this will be to offer significant financial benefits, rewards for those who decide to take up the opportunity to leave the organisation. We often see this in cases of change management that involve delayering or large-scale redundancies, that those who the organisation wants to leave are given a financial incentive to take it, to be offered redundancy and other terms. And lastly, explicit and implicit coercion. Now, this really is the last resort.
Coercion is threats, so we're working our way, so we have so far the last three things that they think about are: one, lying, trying to convince the leaders to jump over to their side. Two is paying someone to go away, or bribing someone to be a leader of the change team. And this one is just basically like threatening, like if you don't do this, then. So there you go. That's John Cotter for you.
Thoughts. If all the other 5 methods have been tried and they're still not working, then maybe you need to resort to coercion. If you don't agree with the change, if you don't do what you're told exactly what the implications will be. Now, the big issue with coercion, threats, is that it damages trust, particularly those who remain within the business. People always remember how an organisation makes them feel, and if they make them feel pretty damaged, pretty negative as a result of coercion, then that's quite hard to recover from once the change project is completed. But nevertheless, Cotter and Schlesinger said, coercion is an option. Perhaps not the best option, but certainly an option to overcome resistance to change. So there we go, that was...
Okay, so... that's Cotter and his, let's say, the way he thinks. But it's in our theory, so it's in our syllabus, so John Cotter, we've got to suffer this guy. And there was a test question last year. Test question had it asked about certain stages of this 8-stage thing. So I'm going to introduce the 8 stages now, and then I'll go over them in detail in the next video, which could be the last video before we see each other again. Cotter's 8 Steps, page 73. Our book, chapter 11, page 73. John Cotter developed 8 steps for change management to make change more likely to be successful and a long-term change. He saw these 8 steps below to be critical success factors in managing change. Now, one way that you can improve your understanding of these is to maybe take the 3 levels of Carl Leuven, unfreezing, the change, and then refreezing, and match them to the 8 steps of Cotter and try to figure out how they kind of fit together. So Cotter and Leuven together would probably be good for a test. Cotter saw in his marketing of his ideas 8 steps to be critical success factors in managing change. These are his names. Creating urgency. Actually, these steps are almost in order. It says 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 7, 6, 8, 7. Almost. They almost got it right this time. Create urgency. I'm just gonna, like I said, go over it in a very general way, and then I'll go over it in detail later. To create urgency basically means that you're trying to make people understand why change is needed, and the risk of not changing. Most of that, if you have a big company or a company that's in a very competitive market is that the company will not be competitive any longer, and that it may not survive, and therefore the people will lose their jobs. I mean, that's the biggest threat. They must be convinced that change is necessary. Form a powerful coalition. So in this way, management is smarter if they get on board the people who are either influential, the influencers of the workplace, or the leadership, if there's any formal leadership of different groups, and to build a coalition, which means like a team or a group, which would be a change team, basically. To create a vision for the change is to get together with this group and then identify what it looks like to have the change, to create an image of what it's going to look like. You see this with real estate developers all the time. They like to make a model of the, you know, when you have this Canho or some condominium development, when they sell it to you, if you go to their offices, they have a model of what it'll look like when it's finished, so you can get excited about the image of the building. Right now it's just an empty hole in the ground, but it's gonna be this. Look at this huge building. Look at how much money we're gonna make from this. So it creates a vision for the change, and then it needs to be communicated in a way that people are going to understand. Well, you know, it needs to be, people need to be updated, and it needs to be, you know, it needs to be like part of the news of the organization of all the times, how we're doing about this in regards to this big change we're doing. And then we have number 5, which I'll talk about tomorrow or next class, remove obstacles. In this case, we're thinking about how obstacles are things blocking the change. So we're not even up, you know, so we don't even start removing obstacles until step 5. And this is when Cotter says, I guess some people should just be removed from the organization. 6, 7, 8 go together, right? Number 6 means instead of having one goal, you have your vision, and if the staff or if the change team doesn't really see, like the subway system, right? So we have this subway system is supposed to go all the way to, I don't know, Sui Tien. I think the last time I was at Sui Tien, there's a subway that goes all the way out there. Great, but until we actually have some, so I think this week they're going to show off the new station, the first station down on Wing Hui Street or Lei Loi Street, and people are going to go in and take pictures of the first subway station. So that's a short-term success. Okay, we finished this station. Look, look, look. We're going to get there someday. We're going to finish the subway. We're going to make it. Look, look, we finished the station. So that would be a short-term win, is to show progress towards the goal. Building on the change, of course, means to shift the culture. That one to me is taking the short-term wins and trying to show, you know, trying to make them into the long-term, trying to shift short-term vision to long-term vision again, and to reinforce why the new way is better than the old way. And step 8 is basically, you know, similar to unfreezing, really. I mean, or refreezing is to show the success, to throw away and get rid of the old system completely, almost celebrate the death of the old system. All of this happens when there's a new king or a new leader or a new president, really in many cases. Okay, so that's a quick overview. I'll have another maybe 30-minute video where I go over this stuff in detail. That's all for today.